Good morning. Thanks everyone for coming. Always great to be in this part of the world in Brevard County. We got a lot of folks here today. We got Richard Corcoran, the Department of Education Commissioner, Dr. Joe Ladapo, the Surgeon General of the state of Florida, Sheriff Wayne Ivey, of course everyone knows here, Phil Archer, State Attorney, 18th Judicial Circuit. We're going to have some parents. Keisha King from Duval County. I don't think she's here yet, but she will be. Dr. Jeremy Steele, also of a parent here in Brevard County. And then I believe that we have also have Devin Marshall here from there. And then we have a number of other sheriffs. We have Sheriff Gordon Smith, Rick Staley, Eric Flowers. I want to thank them. And then we have Representative Randy Fine and Debbie Mayfield from here in Brevard County as well. As many folks know, over the last many months, you've seen a lot of focus be placed on what's happening in school systems across the United States. And there are a number of things that have really animated a lot of important discussions, one of which is the type of curriculum that is being put into these school systems. And we've seen major movements in states like Virginia and others where parents are protesting making curriculum around things like critical race theory, which is very negative about American history, treats kids differently based on race, things in Florida that we violates our standards and that we don't allow. But there's a number of school districts that have tried to do that. There's been a lot of parents who very much objected to that. And then, of course, we've had many battles throughout the United States, including some here in Florida, about forcible masking of school children. In Florida, we have a Parents' Bill of Rights. That decision belongs with the parents, but we've had a number of school districts ignore that. Of course, we're in litigation over that. We think we're going to be able to get some very positive outcomes very soon. But you have a lot of parents, and you'll hear from some of them today, who feel very strongly that this is something that is really their decision to make. And so the result has been, school board meetings that used to be not well attended, very sleepy, have been the source of a lot of passionate discussion and debate. And that is something that is welcome in the state of Florida. It should be welcome everywhere in the United States. If at any time that debate crosses into something that's not peaceful, we have law enforcement here who maintain order, and they do that every single day in a variety of capacities, and they absolutely will do it if need be in those situations. And I think we all know that, and there's never been any discussion or never been any instance in which a sheriff like Wayne Ivey was not been willing to maintain order in their communities. And that's just something that in all 67 counties we would expect that. We'd expect it from all the police departments that we have throughout the state of Florida. And that goes without saying. And they're absolutely within their right to maintain order if you have protests that ends up devolving into something beyond that. So we know that. Nevertheless, the Department of Justice recently said that they need to mobilize the FBI to be able to target effectively parents who are very concerned about some of the things that are going on in some of these school districts. They were acting at the behest of a letter from the National School Board Association, which even likened concerned parents to, quote, domestic terrorists. That is in the letter, in spite of what some media fact checkers would like you to believe. They actually use that term to focus on these parents. Now, the Florida School Board Association saw right through this. They just last week sent a letter to the National School Board Association rejecting what the National School Board Association has done and rejecting the idea that the federal government should be mobilized to supervise these school board meetings. And I think that Florida School Board Association understands that parents and students are really what our school system's all about. To mobilize the FBI, there's no need for it, of course. There's not been any sense that somehow folks here aren't going to do their job if need be. The reason to do that is to intimidate parents, is to squelch dissent, is to have them shut up and just take it even when they strongly disagree with what may be happening with their kid. I mean, you're going to hear from one of the parents here in Brevard County who's got a daughter that has Down syndrome, and this daughter was actually forcibly masked, where they tied the mask onto her face without the parental consent or even knowledge that this was happening, until one day she wore the mask home, and then he'd be able to saw it. I think most parents would be very concerned, to have a special needs child and to be treated like that when they're going to school. So of course you're going to want to speak out. When you have situations like happen in this county where they booted the public out of a meeting and basically continued doing business without that, I think a lot of parents feel very strongly about that. So they have a right to hold people accountable. They have a right to voice their opinions, particularly on some of these very, very key issues. So we are here because up and down the state, law enforcement has been united to say, we don't need federal agents coming in to do this. It's designed to intimidate. It's designed to squelch dissent, and that is not an appropriate use of federal law enforcement. They will do the job that they are commissioned to do here locally, and I have every confidence that they will do that. And part of that means making sure we're protecting the ability of all of our citizens, but particularly our parents, to be able to voice their concerns when it comes to their kids' education. And if you look here at this issue about forced masking, legislature passed Parents' Bill of Rights. Clearly that would be something in terms of health decisions that's in that bill that would be very, very significant. The data from the 2020-2021 school year was very clear. No appreciable difference between forced masking and non-masking in terms of K-12 education. And nevertheless, you've had Brevard and a handful of other school districts say we're not going to follow the law, we're not going to follow the rules put by the Department of Health or the Department of Education, and that they were just going to do what they wanted to do, the rule of law be damned. But we also can see now, here we are 2 months into the school year, and what has happened in the state of Florida. Cases for students in student age peaked just as kids were going into school, probably sometime around the middle of August, and they have decreased in that school-age population for 7 consecutive weeks. Amongst people under the age of 11 or under, cases have decreased by 89%. For ages 12 to 19, they've decreased by 92%. And again, over 54 school districts do not have forced masking. But if you look at it, the rate of decline that we've seen has been basically uniform throughout the state of Florida. You can't point to those districts that are following parental rights and saying, see, look how cases are increasing there. It's collapsed all across the state, up and down, major decreases as a result. And so that's what the data had told us going into the school year. That's what I said back in August would end up happening. And then here we are. That is what is in fact happening. And you look at some places, there's other states where they're forced masking the entire state in schools. And school-age kids, for example, in Pennsylvania, increased 20% from the second week of September to the second week of October. And I think, unfortunately, in these northern states, when they see Delta waves, you're likely to see that continue. So the bottom line is, as a parent, to understand kind of what the law was, to understand the data, and to be concerned about this, they have every right to be concerned about it, particularly given what we've seen happen. If these masks were really making an impact, you would be able to point to a bunch of school districts that have seen explosions in cases with all the kids being in school together. That's what some of the, quote, experts were claiming was going to happen. Instead, it's been a decline. We put 3 million kids back in school. We had universities back on campus. We had pro college football games, full stadiums, and the result has been not only a massive decline in cases. Florida right now is the lowest case rate in the continental United States. For COVID, our RT value is one of the lowest RT values we've had in the entire pandemic. So those are just the realities of what we're dealing with. And so if a parent sees something being done that's more based on ideology or politics, rather than the data and what's best for their kids, of course they're going to want to speak out. Of course they're going to want to make their voice heard. I mean, I think that's the bottom, at bottom, what any parent would want to do. So we're not going to let the federal government come in and impose bad policies or mandates on Floridians. We're going to make sure we're protecting parents and students in the state of Florida. We're not going to let the Department of Justice be weaponized to infringe First Amendment rights of parents. We're going to fight to preserve the rights of parents. And as we continue to see the use of fear and intimidation to suppress opposition to the regime, we're going to find new ways to be able to empower parents' rights to decide what is best for their children. Parents across the state should know that their freedoms are going to be protected here and that the state of Florida has your back. And so I want to thank everybody who's been here. We're going to hear from a number of parents. We're going to hear from some folks in law enforcement, and then we'll hear from the elected officials and Surgeon General. Do we have Keisha? Oh, you want to come up and start us off?
Hi, everyone. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Governor DeSantis, and give our prayers go out to your lovely wife in her battle that she's facing, and for your leadership on education and for parental rights. Governor DeSantis has stood very strong against critical race theory and everything that comes along with that. And so recently, we've all been through a lot lately in this country, and the government now has decided to use its powers to come after parents who find some of the things going on in these schools unacceptable, to say the least. Just look at what happened in Virginia. And instead of them being on our side to help us because we are concerned about our children, they have turned the FBI against parents. It used to be that they would allow us, they wanted to work with us. There was more of them that wanted to, that wanted to call us to come together. Now we're being looked at as domestic terrorists. And I find it utterly disgusting, quite frankly, to think that you could be home ironing your kids' clothes, making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and the FBI could come knocking at your door because you said something, not violence, but you said something that they deemed was intimidating. I don't know what else to call that, but just fear, tactics of fear to silence parents who are rightfully concerned about their children. And I see now that there are really two options that we have. I'm saying that maybe we need a mass exodus if that's for you. And if not, we certainly need to elect competent school board members who will stand up for parents' rights. And I will fight with any parent who wants to run for school board so we can have the right to make sure that our children get the best education possible. That is, after all, what we're paying them to do. So thank you, Governor DeSantis, and thank you so much for allowing me to speak here.
Thanks.
God bless you.
Okay, we have Dr. Jeremy Steele, a parent from here in Brevard County.
Thank you very much. Yep. For the media, it's Jeffrey Steele, Dr. Jeffrey Steele. I'm here as the father of a Down syndrome child, 7 years of age, named Sophia. Now, Sophia has also sensory issues that go along with her Down syndrome. One as such is an oversized tongue. Sophia is unable to make any or most of her needs, she's not able to make them known to us. She speaks often sounding like a severely deaf child with the sounds that she makes phonetically. So she is not able to communicate even if she was in any distress or if anything ever even happened to her outside of our home while she was in school. Sophia was placed in this school in Indian Harbor Beach by the school authorities because though we were in a different school district, they put her there because she was special needs and they would give her and provide all the things that she needed for her education in this school. When she went back to school this year, and there was no mask mandate happening until, of course, the pandemic began to go and get a little bit crazy for a little while, and I work in the medical field every day. I deal with the dying every day. I work in hospice care. So I know what we were facing all along throughout this pandemic. I even got COVID myself with bilateral pneumonia. My doctor sent me to Merritt Island to get the injections, and in 4 days I was eating pizza with my feet in the Atlantic Ocean. So thank you, Governor, for that as well. So I know the effects and the impact of what happens with COVID. But I also know a greater impact of what happens with a Down syndrome child when you mask them. But my daughter was not only just masked, against our awareness. We were not aware that this was happening. She has an IEP. We assumed that she was not being masked at school because she wasn't coming home with a mask tied on her face, except this one day on October the 7th when my wife got her off the bus to bring her home. The bus left and she noticed this blue cord around my daughter's face with this very soiled mask that was completely soaked from Sophia's saliva, because this is what happens when a sensory effect is taking place, the fact that she is having breathing issues. She will produce a lot of saliva. They tied this around her head and have never, ever phoned me nor my wife to ask us permissions, though we did have IEP meetings, and one phone call that we had about 3 to 4 weeks ago where we were being told that Sophia was taking her shoes off every day at school, and could we comply and get her another pair of shoes so she wouldn't take them off every single day. Why didn't they call me to tell me she was taking her mask off every day? And they were having trouble keeping her on. And what could we do as parents to participate with them? Perhaps they didn't want us to know that they were doing this. So to make a long story very short, is that I met with the principal and I met with the teacher. And the reason that I learned that it wasn't just happening this one time on October the 7th, it had been happening every day since the mandate was put back in place. And the reason that the teacher complied with it was for the purpose of the mandate that was given by the school board, 3-2. 3 people are deciding on the health of my child rather than any phone call to those who take care of Sophia every single day. This is a major problem that's happening, and this should wake people up to what is actually going on. Because I, as a parent, I believe, personally, my opinion, it has nothing to do with mask and science and everything to do with power and control. Sophia can't be here to talk for you, but I can, and I will. And so I want to thank my attorney, who is here with me as well today, because we will be taking action, and they will understand my voice when I do that. Thank you, Governor. Thank you for your leadership, sir.
Thanks, Devin. Okay, Devin Marshall.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Devin Marshall. I am a mother of 2. One is 2 years old, one is 5 years old. I started paying attention to the school board meetings when I was preparing my 5-year-old for kindergarten. As a parent, I lost so much sleep trying to figure out what school was going to be the best option for her with all of the limitations that they had put in place the prior year. When I saw decisions that they were making that I wasn't happy with, I wanted to find out who was making these decisions, what their role was, and how I could be of some support. By educating myself, I chose a charter school, and they did choose to keep masks optional whenever the school board made it mandatory. Now, when I watched the school board meeting happen live, and they made it mandatory for parents to have a medical exemption, it was not a parental option, but I sent in a parental opt-out anyways to our school, because I wanted them to know where I stood as a parent. Now, I did try to get a medical exemption. I was declined by more than one pediatrician. They said that they believe in vaccines and masks, and that my time in that appointment would not result in a medical exemption for my child. So as a parent, I tried a different route. I went to a dentist. I was declined by the dentist as well. They will not write medical exemptions. So as a parent, I lost all hope that if my school chose to enforce the mask mandate, I would not have a choice. And that is terrifying for a kindergarten parent. You know, this is their first year, there's a lot of changes as is. So I was very grateful when they kept it optional and sent out a survey to all the parents asking what we thought about it. The day that the stay was removed by the judge in this legal battle and political show, a substitute who had never spoken to my daughter, did not know her name, had never been in her classroom before, made sure to tell every 5- and 6-year-old in that classroom that you will go home tonight and tell your parents that that you want to wear a mask tomorrow. You want to wear a mask tomorrow to keep your friends safe and yourself safe from this deadly virus. I don't know about you, but as a parent, a stranger fear-mongering my child to where she got in the car and asked me instantly, why do I have to wear a mask tomorrow? I don't want to. I can't breathe when I wear them. I called the school instantly. The principal thankfully removed that substitute. But these are issues that we're dealing with as parents. When a school board oversteps their bounds and doesn't listen to the constituents. I watch all of the meetings. I go to the meetings that I can go to. And I want to communicate and work with our board members. What they are doing is wrong. They are shortening our time from 3 minutes speaking time to 1 minute. At one meeting, they pushed off public comment until 10 p.m., where there were toddlers and newborns with their parents waiting to speak to be heard. And then at the very last meeting, another board member attacked a board member and got a reaction from the parents because we're tired of dealing with your personal issues. We want you to focus on our child's education. They removed the parents from the room to make the decision against our will. So I'm here as a parent. I just want what's best for our kids. I want to work directly with our school board. I don't want to cause any diversity, but we need to have a united front, and our kids' education needs to be top priority. So thank you so much, Ron DeSantis, for everything that you're doing, and thank you.
Great. Okay, Randy Fine.
Well, thank you, Governor. Thank you for being here today. And I thank you not only as a legislator, but as a parent of an 8th grader who right now is illegally being forced to wear a mask at a Brevard government-run school. He's very excited that I'm here today. This is not new in Brevard County. Our superintendent, Mark Mullins, told me years ago that I was not qualified to have an opinion about my child's education because I did not have a degree in academic administration like he did. And that is the attitude that we have seen repeated here multiple times. Whether it's CRT or, frankly, these mask mandates, they have taken away our options. I want to focus on 2 issues very briefly. The last speaker mentioned, but our school board 2 weeks ago, our school board chair threw the public, all of the public, out of a school board meeting and held a 45-minute school board meeting in private. The law of the state of Florida is clear. All public meetings have to be open to the public at all times. But this is what has happened when our school boards think they no longer have to follow the law. And I know our state attorney and his chief of staff, my colleague Representative Soroy, have gotten many criminal complaints, and I know that they are hard at work figuring out how to deal with this moving forward. Amazingly, they've even doubled down on that policy with that school board chair saying as long as the meeting is on TV, they have the right to exclude the public from the meetings. That might be the law in Virginia, but it is not the law in the state of Florida. The last thing I want to say is I very much appreciate the parent who told the story about his daughter, Sophia, and what happened to her. And I can guarantee you this, in the role that I play in the legislature, there will be consequences for that. But he left out one part of the story that I want to share with you right now. When all of this happened, he called his school board member. He called his school board member multiple times. And his school board member refused to talk to him on the phone. But you know what that school board member had time to do at the same time? Go on MSNBC 4 times to complain about parents complaining about mask mandates. There's a special place in hell for these people who have done this to this man's daughter, and I assure you we're going to hold them accountable for that.
Debbie Mayfield, Senator.
Thank you, Governor, and I'll keep it really short. I just want to thank the Governor for taking the lead on this issue and the parents for coming forward. I think that the school districts have forgotten who those children belong to. They don't belong to the federal government. They don't belong to the school district. They belong to the parents. And the parents have every right to be engaged in the education of their child. And part of that education is to teach them what they need in school, not put political fears in them, not put their own social agenda in on them. And when the parents said that the substitute teacher said, go home, tell your mother that you want to wear a mask to school to protect all your friends, that is not what these teachers are in that classroom to do. They are in there to teach them. They're in there to teach them reading, to teach them math, to teach them the history of our country, to teach them civics. That's what their role is. Their role is not to mold them into their image on what they want. That's the parent's role in this life. So we will, and I can assure you that Governor DeSantis is going to stay on the top of this. Secretary or Commissioner Corcoran, Secretary Corcoran of Education is going to stay on top of this. Our new Surgeon General is going to stay on top of this. The parents are going to have some relief in this, where we will go to bat for you. We will fight for you, even though your school board members will not be the ones fighting for you. So this is a message to the school board members. You are going to start listening to the parents, or either you will be unelected by school board members that will listen to the parents, because that is your role. You are not equal to the legislature. Your role is to do what we put in policy to do to protect the children in the school district. So Governor DeSantis, thank you for taking this huge leadership role in this issue.
Okay, we have Sheriff Wayne Ivey.
Thank you, Governor. All of us up here are appreciative of Governor DeSantis taking a position on this and standing strong. I think I speak for everybody up here, and I know I speak for the majority of the sheriffs in this great state. We also thank Governor DeSantis for being a leader among other governors, for standing up for our freedom, standing up for our constitutional rights. As he said, Floridians are not going to have their constitutional freedoms trampled on. What we're seeing happen on many levels, when you think of DOJ, that is assigning the FBI to target parents as domestic terrorists, it's outrageous. Trust me, there are plenty of terrorists globally that they can focus on. Real terrorists, terrorists that are out there killing people each and every day, not parents who are voicing their opinions and fighting with every breath they have for their children, which everybody in this room would do in a heartbeat. Our parents are people that are upset, they're emotional. They have the biggest concern of all, and that is raising the next generation of leaders. And so, to those parents that are out there, I want you to know that for me, all the sheriffs that are standing here, and I think I speak for all of us across this great state, we are your first line of defense. We're the last line of defense for you as well. We don't need DOJ to come down here and investigate a school board meeting that gets a little bit of rowdy. Our teams handle that each and every day. We deal with it. In Brevard County, we serve as a model. This community serves as a model for other communities across the country to follow in how we deal with crisis, how we deal with emotion. But what we don't need is somebody coming in here starting to investigate our parents for voicing their opinions. To the mask mandate here in Brevard County, the illegal mask mandate that violates the governor's executive order. Let me just be very clear. I have made it clear to my school resource deputies, our head of security at the schools, that we are not the mask police. If your child is not wearing a mask, we are not going to engage in any action. We will not. My deputies do not have to wear masks on the school campuses. If they choose to, that is their freedom to do so. But parents, I want you to know, we stand strong in that this mask mandate is a violation of the governor's order, and we will not help enforce it in any way. So coach your children appropriately with that. And I've made the school board aware of that as well. The last thing I will say is this. Be careful who you put in these seats. Our children's education is one of the most important components we will ever have an opportunity to lead in. Be careful who you're putting in those seats. Put someone in those seats that's going to stand up for the United States Constitution like our governor does each and every day. I truly ask you to make sure you're looking at who you're voting for. Governor, thank you, sir.
Okay, we have State Attorney Phil Archer.
Thank you, Governor. First of all, I'm going to start off by bragging. I believe I have some of the best prosecutors in this country, state or federal, and they handle some of the toughest, worst crimes imaginable, first-degree murder cases, rape, robbery, complex RICO cases involving drug organizations. I'm very confident that they can handle a threat case against a public official, or for that matter, a threat against anyone. We hold all those at the same level, so I'm very confident. And I'm going to brag on our sheriff. His men and women that work with Sheriff Ivey, they do an incredible job investigating any case of any crime that occurs here in Brevard County. Same with FDLE, Agent in Charge Jason Kriegsman. They do an incredible job with those investigations. I don't need the federal authorities to come in and investigate those cases for me. I don't need federal prosecutors to handle them. We can do it. And in fact, you know, the positive part of having the sheriff or the FDLE investigate those cases, I have a strong relationship with those agencies. With one phone call, I can call Sheriff Ivey, I can call Agent Kriegsman, and I can get whatever I need accomplished. I don't have that same relationship with federal agencies, and so I worry about that. And so I'm very confident that we can handle these cases. It's almost like last year with the House Bill 1 anti-riot bill. Thank you for your leadership on that, Governor. There was a lot of hysteria about, oh my gosh, is law enforcement going to be able to distinguish between a peaceful protest and a riot? And of course we can. And I assure you, we will be able to distinguish between lawful, constitutionally protected speech and speech or acts that rise above that and go to the level of a criminal threat or disrupt a school function or meeting. We can do that, and we're prepared to do that, Governor. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we have the Surgeon General of Florida, Dr. Joe Ladapo.
Thanks, Governor. Hello. So I'm happy to be talking here today about this issue related to the mask specifically. Obviously, we've covered several important issues related to parents and their kids. And I want you guys to step back for a moment from what you hear sort of constantly on TV. And just very briefly, in terms of the data that supports mask use in kids and mandates for masks in kids, it is very weak, and that's a fact. So there's a substantial gap between the quality of the data out there, which shouldn't surprise you, right? We haven't been doing this very long. But there's a substantial gap between the quality of the data out there supporting masks in kids, yielding any benefit for kids whatsoever, factual, and what we're hearing from some of our public health leadership in other states and nationally. So in Florida, it's part of the reason I'm here. It's part of the reason when the governor's office called, I was excited and happy to work with him on his efforts. In Florida, we're going to stay close to the data, and we're going to let you know how we feel about the data. And the data do not support any clinical benefit for children in schools with mask mandates. The highest quality data find no evidence of benefit. And that's how, and we're going to stick with that because that's what the data show. And the other thing I'll just add is that, you know, as a parent, hearing these stories of other parents and what they're going through and seeing other parents around the country, these are impossible situations parents are being put in. Putting a mask, something on the face of your child, that's a parent's decision. It's not a school's decision. It's not a school board's decision. It's not a governor's decision. It's no one else's decision except for the parent. And parents are being placed in these impossible situations related to the health of their children. I'm here to help support parents in voicing how they feel their children should sort of present, should be in the world, and I'm going to be here to help with that and to support that.
You know, it's interesting, the U.S. Secretary of Education, he did like some tweet thread, like it was like a month ago, and he's like, follow the data on the mask, and he cited a few studies. He cited one study from North Carolina which said forced masking of kids work, but it had no control group because that was required in every school. So they just said it worked without comparing it against what if you didn't do that, and people pointed that out immediately. Then he cited a study from the university, or from Wisconsin about it. And the researcher who did the study immediately responded to the tweet and said, we found no conclusive evidence on the forced masking, and basically said that you should not use my study to do that. And so what the Surgeon General is saying exactly right. I mean, the data is very clear. When you're having to put out those types of studies, which have easy holes in them that you could basically point out very quickly, you know that you're not dealing with something that's been very, very significant in terms of differences. And as we've said, our experience in Florida last school year with the districts that forced it and didn't comes to similar conclusion of what the Surgeon General said. Okay, we have Richard Corcoran.
Thank you, Governor. I appreciate the opportunity. Appreciate your leadership. You know, it's been said, and it sounds like we're just here and we're talking about isolated incidences or just Brevard County or just particular parents, but it's even a bigger issue. It's been said that you can determine how free a country is by a citizen's ability to walk into Main Street and scream whatever they would like about their leaders. And when you start having an attorney general who comes down and he starts saying that if you're a domestic terrorist, if you care about your children and you want to be able to go to a school board and voice your opinions, no matter what those are. I even tweeted, and I know this is tongue-in-cheek, but Parks and Rec once had an episode, and they had a third-world dictator, and he was watching the city council meeting, and they started having a raucous city council meeting, which is wonderful and great. We should have civic debate whenever we can. And he goes off, and they put him on camera, and he goes, I can't believe this is happening. How does this happen? In my country, if you drive too fast, you get arrested. If you drive too slow, you get arrested. If you miss a dental appointment, you get arrested. And literally, I tweeted because this is what Merrick Garland is saying. A parent goes and says, we don't want CRT. You're suppressed, arrested, kicked outside, as Representative Fine said. It's absurd. And here's what I would say to Merrick Garland. If Merrick Garland believes and has said that parents who want to fight for the health, safety, and the education well-being of their children are domestic terrorists, and if he wants to say that, I'm okay with it. If he wants to say that those who take to our streets, destroy buildings, destroy public property, ruin people's livelihood and their ability to put food on their table, that's okay. If he wants to say that, I'm okay. I will defend Merrick Garland's right to say whatever he wants, whether it is an absolutely abhorrent, incorrect, and wrong. We have to have a great First Amendment. And if we don't, what we're doing right here, today, will cease to exist in a generation or two. Here's two great philosophies, and you've heard them from the group. One is, Sheriff Ivey said it, all you have to do is look at how children are being educated, and you can determine the future of that country. That's a fact. Number two, and you've heard it, is our children are our most precious natural resource. More important than anything else we have is the ability to get our children, raise them up to be great citizens, and go out there and preserve this democracy and this republic for another 2 centuries plus. And I'll just say, anybody who does not believe that, anybody like Merrick Garland who wants to trample all over and create a chilling effect of freedom of speech, I don't know how you do that and say you love this republic. It's not possible. But I want to tell you something, and I'll close with this. There's a lot of sheriffs behind me, so I don't want to offend our sheriffs. But we have a new sheriff in town, national sheriff in town, and that sheriff, Governor Ron DeSantis, he will fight for you. He will protect our Constitution. He will not allow anyone to trample over that First Amendment or any other amendment for that fact. And we will stand behind Governor DeSantis, everyone here, and we will fight for every parent, we'll fight for every child. And the reason we do that is because we love this county, we love this state, and we love our country. And we want to see it exist for another 200 years plus. Thank you.
Also just want to recognize we have Larry Keefe, who's our public safety czar for the state of Florida. He had previously been the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Florida. And, in your experience is using the FBI to police school board meetings. Is that a good use of resources with all the issues you had to deal with?
No, sir.
Yeah, no, not at all. So, and here's the thing. We're ranked, Florida now, K-12, we're ranked number 3. What was it, Education Week? Yes. The Education Week has us number 3 in K through 12 education. I can tell you, as someone that was born and raised in Florida, we were not number 3 when I was growing up. So we've been able to do a lot. We have more choice in our system than any state in the country. We have good standards, and when we see things that can be done better, like with what we're doing by stopping the end of the year FSA and moving to progress monitoring, we're going to be doing that. We're going to be nimble. We're going to be quick. We want to serve the students' needs and the parents' needs as best we can, and we're doing that. And the results show that. We were the only large state in the country last school year that 100% of the parents had the right to send their kids to school in person. There were some places where vast swaths had no meaningful access to in-person instruction 5 days a week. So we've got a lot of great stuff. Here in Brevard, what they're doing with some of the vocational education, we're doing that big throughout the state. Kids are getting hired by Elon Musk and all these great companies right out of high school even having these important skills, and we're expanding that all the time, and it's been a huge thing, part of my administration, and our workforce education since I've been governor is going through the roof in a good way, which is what we want. So we have so many great things going on, and we really need to stop using the schools as kind of people getting on these school boards and then using that to advance themselves or to try to play different types of political games. Let the parents make these decisions, and if one wants their kid to do, fine. If they don't, no one's saying you can't, but you just should make sure that people are honored. I think that would really lower the temperature a lot. I think parents would appreciate that. And then also with some of the curriculum, yes, we move very quickly against things like critical race theory, but there is a movement across this country to move away from this being focus on the core things that we need people to be educated in and try to impose a certain orthodoxy or a certain worldview on the kids. That's not an appropriate use of a school system, but when that's being done, you can understand why parents are going to be frustrated with that and are going to want to speak out against it, because that's not the right thing to do. And so that you see. So making sure we're focusing on the basics, don't get sidetracked into trying to impose ideology through the curriculum. And if we're doing that, then, man, you're going to have much more harmony as a result. And so I think that we shouldn't, as frustrating as it's been to hear these stories. I mean, I'm really, when I heard about the young lady with the Down syndrome, I was really, really angry. I'm still angry about it. And so it's frustrating. We are doing a lot of good stuff, though. So let's make sure that we're protecting people's rights to speak out. We're not going to be cooperating with any types of federal investigations into parents, and we'll do whatever we can to thwart such investigations. And we are going to be fortifying parents' rights. I mean, the Parents' Bill of Rights was good, but I don't think it was written with the idea that you would face intransigent officials to the extent that we would. And so, you need to make sure that there's ability to make sure that that can be enforced very quickly. As I mentioned, we're in the First District Court of Appeal. We're expecting a potential writ of mandamus against some of the school districts in the northern part of the state. And I think we will get that. And obviously, at that point, they will have no choice but to comply. But I think it really should be done in a way that can be more effective and give parents a more speedy and effective way to vindicate their rights. And I also worry about, you're forcing somebody that has special needs, you're tying that around her face. What if that causes academic harm, emotional harm, any type of physical? If that causes harm, then what's the parent's right? Do they have a right to be compensated on behalf of their kid? I think that they need to have that right. I think they need to be able to go and vindicate that and be able to bring a case in court. So there's going to be things that are going to be fortified on top of what's been done. And you remember back last legislative session, it really didn't occur that if you would have done something like this, that you would have, this types of entrenchment. But it's just, there's political narratives, there's different stuff, and so that's kind of the way it goes. But I think we have an opportunity to fill those gaps and make sure that we're going in a good direction. I think if parents feel that they have appropriate recourse, I think that will go a long way to alleviating a lot of the concerns that we have. But at the end of the day, people have a right to speak out. They have a right to be concerned when they see some of the things that have been happening, particularly if policies are being implemented that are not really reflective of the overall will of the community and the parents. They have every right to do that. You're going to be protected in the state of Florida. And I think there's a whole host of things, as Sheriff Ivey says, that you could have federal law enforcement focusing on. Why don't we focus on some of the crime that's coming across the southern border? Why don't we focus on some of the international terrorism that we've seen through the years? Why don't we focus on health, focus on finding the guy who killed Gabby Petito? I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I think is very, very important that we really rely on federal law enforcement to take the lead on, not going after parents, not policing school board meetings, not trying to squelch dissent. So we'll stand with free speech and we'll stand with the parents of this state. Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions?
Can we talk about that scene? In Orange County, the 1st Battalion chief was just fired because he refused to write up firefighters who the county said were violating the vaccine mandates. He has lost his job. He said it was a violation of the law. They sent him to disobeyed it to North Dakota. Can you weigh in on now the firings coming?
I think the firing was totally inappropriate. I think it's ridiculous. And these are people that have served our communities, and they're being tossed aside. I mean, it is illegal to do it. There's going to be response, and I think ultimately he will prevail. And I hope that, and we, whatever we can do, we're going to do to stand by. But just put that aside. Say it was perfectly legal. How is it right to force somebody to lose their job, over this issue? I just don't understand it. This is very political, and I think it's something that is not in the best interest of our communities, particularly those people that have been out doing their job nonstop. They were not doing, I don't think you can put out a fire on Zoom. I don't think that would work very well. I think you got to be out there. I think you got to be helping people. And that's what they've been doing. And so now to be able to do it. But I think it does violate the law. But I also think if you look at how that law was written, I think you can make it even more explicit and have immediate ability for folks like that to vindicate their rights. So we are going to be very soon rolling out, I think, some additions to some of the protections that we've already have in the law that I think hopefully will be able to put all of this to bed, because you are really putting people's livelihoods in jeopardy here over what really should be a personal and an individual decision. And the Surgeon General has made this point a number of times, but you also have to look at what's the broader issue here in terms of policy, and what are these really heavy-handed mandates? What would that do? What does that do to public trust? What does that do to people who may have been on the fence? I don't think there's very much evidence that it's doing very much positive. I think this has caused huge fissures in our society. It's been very, very divisive. It's taken people who were agnostic about the vaccine and turned them into major, major opponents. It's taken people who are vaccinated and gotten them on the other side where they're upset about what's going on. So I think it's really inappropriate that anyone would lose their job over this. We're going to enforce state law, but at the same time, we're going to make it so that there's even stronger protections. And I think that's something that would make sense. You're going to look to see, so the U.S. had a weak jobs report in September. The state numbers will come out Friday, and it'll be interesting to look at those numbers and see which states punched above their weight and which states did poorly, and whether some of these heavy-handed mandates may be contributing to some of the states who may not be doing quite as well economically. Because I can tell you, if you just take a small percentage of folks, well, actually, Orange County, they were ready to walk. So they wanted to fire people over that, but they knew they couldn't because they would lose too much of the force. And so I think you're seeing that in other instances as well. Even if it's a small percentage of folks, you're just not going to be able to run a lot of these operations. So from an individual's perspective, it should be the individual's choice, for sure. When you have it being mandated against Florida law, that's a problem. When you have the Biden mandate through OSHA, which hasn't come out yet, that's not constitutional. And so there's legitimate constitutional and legal issues at stake. But then just from a practical economic perspective, you're going to end up leaving some of these areas very shorthanded, and I just think it's fundamentally unfair, and I think it's unwise.
Governor, Attorney General hasn't been a lot of policy of federalism. I'm wondering if you see the federal government, the DOJ, the FBI, anybody coming into Florida on any of these cases.
So here's what they were supposed to do, and you're right. So this announcement hit. It kind of hit like a ton of bricks. They wanted to convene in each federal district kind of a working group with local, state, and federal. I think a lot of the folks that are on the ground in DOJ, in the individual states, I think were caught off guard on it. Now, obviously, they have to follow directives, but my sense would be it wasn't very well received, and because I think they, like Larry Keefe said, there's a lot of other things to be doing. So we have not seen it presented to Florida where, hey, we're going to create a task force to oversee the parents or anything. Of course, we wouldn't participate in such an endeavor. But I think part of the reason why is because I do think there was a lot of blowback. I mean, when the National School Board Association is using terms like domestic terrorism, that is so far overboard that it strikes people, even people who don't have a dog in the fight, it strikes them as just being ridiculous. And so I think it was a big mistake. I think it was a miscalculation. And hopefully they'll decide to pursue areas that are a little bit more appropriate for federal intervention. I mean, there are certain things that, of course, run-of-the-mill federal laws that they should be doing. Anything that they would point to at like a school board meeting, you would have jurisdiction here in the state of Florida to be able to handle that. Our folks, we very much demand everything remain peaceful and orderly. That's just the way our society is going to be run here in Florida. And I don't care what your ideology is. If you're getting out of hand, even if I may agree with you, you're not going to be allowed to get out of hand. And Wayne and all these sheriffs, I've not had one person say that somehow this isn't anything they'd want to do. And we understand that. So hopefully they'll recognize that there's a lot of blowback. There were actually Pennsylvania School Board Association. They actually got out of the National School Board Association over this letter. So that's a pretty significant thing. So it's caused a huge rift, and again, in areas where we don't need to. Let's focus on, we're number 3 Education Week. Let's try to get to number 1. Let's continue to expand vocational education. Let's continue to make sure we're protecting things like Bright Future so people can go to our state universities. There's so many good things that are going on that we need to really be doing. This is just not one of them. So hopefully they've gotten the message, but I can tell you, whatever we need to do to be able to protect parents and to really, it's a slap in the face to our law enforcement in Florida and throughout the country when they're saying they have to come in and do this. What? They don't need to have their hand held by federal agents over basic law enforcement. They're well trained. They do a great job throughout the state force. That's one of the reasons why our crime isn't as high in some of these other areas where they've turned their back on police. So we can do it, and we will do it. And hopefully that's just that, because I think it backfired on them, and I think that it was appropriate that it backfired. I don't know if it's over. No. I mean, I think one of the reasons we wanted to do this is just to make clear that any parent that may feel threatened or cowed into coming out and participating in civil discourse, they shouldn't be. That you will be protected, and that we're going to make sure to stand with you at the state level. We are not going to be facilitating or participating in any of the things that were outlined in that memo, because it's just not appropriate to do that. And understand, I mean, people, they get it. I mean, when you sick the feds on somebody, you're bringing an 800-pound gorilla and you're just dropping it on somebody like a ton of bricks. And so even if you're just under the gun, even if you didn't do anything wrong, they have the potential to potentially ruin your life if they really want to do it. And of course, much of what they do now is charge people with process crimes. So they'll try to get you, find an inconsistent statement, and then they'll go and try to pursue that. And so we don't want to be, we don't want to go down that road at all in Florida.
Governor, my question about that, you were just in Jacksonville. Can you tell us, do you believe Florida ports are in a position to accept more cargo and have the infrastructure to be able to bring in additional ships and that type of thing? Can we have that capacity here in the state?
Absolutely. So the question was about the ports. We did an event at Jacksport, but we also had folks. We had the Port of Tampa CEO. We had Everglades from down in South Florida, as well as Panama City. So yes, we have capacity, which is a great thing. We've invested almost $1 billion into our ports since I've been governor. Very significant. And we have the capacity. We also have a tempo that is good. They made the big deal about, in L.A. they're going to now go 24. We do 24/7. I mean, that's kind of the standard practice. And so we have the ability to do that. They also have, on each individual port, is able to offer incentive packages to companies that may reroute cargo. And those are negotiated kind of on a case-by-case basis, but all of them right now are offering different types of incentives. And so, yes, we have the capacity to receive more. We have the capacity to distribute more. And if you're stuck off the coast of Savannah, come to Jacksonville. If you're stuck off the coast of California, you want to come through the Panama Canal, we're going to be able to service it in the state of Florida. This supply chain thing is already, I mean, we're seeing empty shelves, we're seeing different things, but has the potential to get a lot worse. And so Florida can really be stepping up to try to ameliorate that, particularly as we get into the holiday season. I mean, just think about it. You're going to have people for Christmas shopping, all the things that Americans love to do and Floridians love to do, and you're going to have that potentially stymied if we don't get this thing going. So we can offer, I think, an important partial solution to the problems that we're seeing. That lack of supply and the bottlenecks and all that, That, of course, helps contribute to some of the rising prices that we've seen. If you look, gas, groceries, the basic staples for any family, it's gone up tremendously, just in the last 9 months to a year. And it doesn't seem like it's going to abate anytime soon. So if we're able to provide an ability to get more goods to market, I think that will be able to help in a wide variety of contexts. So yes, our ports are open, our ports are running, our ports have capacity, and if you're somebody that's thinking about maybe coming to Florida, they will want to do a deal with you to make it even more worth your while. We announced the European shipment that was coming into Jacksport, which was one of the rare times where they've gotten some from Europe, which is great. And then Port Everglades has one coming in, a massive one coming in from India this weekend, which is really, really exciting. So we're going to keep humming here. I think it's very, very important that we keep everything moving, going. We've been doing that very, very well. We're going to continue to do it. And Friday, I think, will be interesting when all these state numbers come out, because we're at a situation where you have some headwinds, and then you have states like Florida that are kind of charting back to make sure people have opportunities. And I think I don't think you're going to see uniform. I think you're going to see some places did well, and I think you're going to see others, that did very, very poorly, which is odd if it's not tied to maybe one specific industry, but it may very well be because of some of these supply chain issues, as well as some of the regulations and mandates over COVID, which are still in effect in many different parts of the country. For sure. So it's a great question. So we need more truck drivers. So what we're doing, we're supporting a number of programs throughout Florida where people can get a commercial driver's license. You are now seeing more pay being offered to where you're being able to drive. And really, if you have the skills, you can make a very, very good living immediately and potentially do a lot more going forward. So it's important. It's also important, yes, you need the people to drive it. You also need the people to service the vehicles. These are big vehicles. It's not like you can just take it to the local body shop. This is these diesel technicians are important. So we just expanded opportunities up in the Panhandle, for example, where we did a program for diesel technicians. Are going to be able to offer more slots for that. I think these are positions that are going to pay well, and so we've made a big effort to make sure high schools were actively involved in this, letting the kids know that this is something that has an opportunity, as well as other folks who may be looking. But that is something. Now, our trucking industry in Florida, we had some folks there yesterday at Jacksport. They can handle more capacity. They're having different issues, but really in the economy, you're seeing that all across in a variety of industries in terms of needing more personnel. In Florida, we have about between 400 and 500,000 job openings right now in the state of Florida. And so as we've seen more jobs added, which is great, we could have the capacity to add a lot more. So I think that's kind of a constant. They do need more drivers, but they are able to manage right now, and they are able to do more, at least from some of these Florida ports. And of course, we also have invested a lot in rail, so we have the ability to move a lot via the rail, which is also very, very important. So at the end of the day, though, let's make sure that this stuff, that people know that Florida's here for all these things. And I think you're going to see more and more want to come reroute to Florida because they know get it into the port and we can get it out to market very, very effectively. I'd have to look at that. I mean, my view would be, I generally support reciprocity with some of these things. So I'd have to see if that's something we would need to change the statute for, or is it something that can be done maybe through some of the administrative agencies or administrative boards. Okay, thanks everybody. Great to be here.